Today's a very important show. We'll be talking about the most important topics affecting Tesla investors. First, the Tesla board of directors are reported to have formed a special committee for Elon's compensation package. This is great news, but what will this look like? Second, Tesla just dropped a new demo of their humanoid bot Optimus. We'll explain why this is a really big deal. Third, we've got new vehicles, game time in June, and Elon's new big hairy goal of 1 terawatt of compute. We've got the bulls here with us today. We've got Jeff Lutz, the Mr. Incredible, the Rational Bull. We've got Tesla Boomer Mama, the Queen, Alexandra Merz, the Power Bull, Larry Goldberg, the Golden Bull, and Cern Basher, the Bot Bull. Welcome, everybody.
Hey, Herbert.
Hi, Herbert.
Hi, Herbert.
So very big week. Lots of things are happening. And I think not only has Elon been so much more, active, been posting so much about not only June, Robotaxi, but Optimus, and we'll be showing that demo. But the most important thing, let's start with that, which is Elon's compensation package. The company and the product. I don't look at the quarterly stock movement.
A very realistic bull, questioning certain decisions.
The rational bull. We enjoy listening to bears.
We're looking for the red flags. You're supposed to react.
Yeah, we only earned 50 cents a share the last quarter. I mean, come on, guys.
Why don't you kick us off, Alexandra? What happened?
Sure. So journalists found, and I was actually contacted by Bloomberg's Dana Hull yesterday or the day before, saying they found in the Q1 10Q the line saying that the board had decided to put in place a special committee to discuss compensation, to put in place compensation for Elon Musk. And so from there on, they started contacting people, and I have my theories how they contacted people and how this all came together. I'll talk that in a moment, and got that story that then Financial Times published first. It's not surprising since we knew the proxy for this year's shareholder meeting was late. I've been telling you for I don't know how many weeks, we're waiting for that proxy end of April, we're waiting for that proxy end of April. We're now middle of May and we still hadn't gotten it. So there was something brewing, clearly something brewing, because there are SEC rules how close to last year's shareholder meeting you have to hold this year's. You can't just select the date and say, well, now we're doing it 3 months later. That's not how it works. So you have to have the reasons why you're late. You have to declare it to the SEC, and you have to announce it one way or the other to the shareholders. And I mean, they did it in a very discreet, sneaky way by just putting it into the 10Q and not making a fuss about it. And I mean, I didn't read it to the last sentence, and obviously didn't find it. It was a tiny little sentence in there. And then, so what happened? They put in place a special committee, which is headed by the chair, Robin Denholm, and consists of two people, Robin Denholm and Kathleen Wilson-Thompson. Kathleen, first of all, has been the one that was on the special committee last year on deciding whether Texas would be the place to go. So she is obviously very, very involved in special committees. Now, you have to understand, last year's special committee was under Delaware's laws. Now this one is under Texas law. So they appointed a new law firm. I don't remember the name anymore. And I'm sorry, I have to first explain why this setting. I'm in New York for the graduation of our youngest son. So I'm in the hotel room, and I'm by far not as prepared I usually am, but I'm trying to put it all together. So they appointed a new law firm. It's not the same law firm that helped them last year navigate the shareholder vote and the Texas redomestication. They have now a new one that is specialized in Texas corporate law, helping them through this special committee. So why is this so important? Well, because Texas has different rules than Delaware. We were since 2010, since the IPO, bound by Delaware laws, and lots of things were not possible. And actually, Elon had commented on that for a couple of times, saying, under Delaware laws, there's only one share class A shares. We all have the same. When he has his 13%, or maybe hopefully at one point 20%, they're the same shares, they're the same type of shares with the same rights and obligations that we have when we buy as retail shareholders. So that is something that was stuck in Delaware the way it is since 2010, but that can change now in Texas. In Texas, you can issue different types of share classes. And I actually think that's one of the theories I have, that what they're trying to do. Because remember, Elon wants to have at least 25% of voting power. And why is that important to him? Well, let's start all from the beginning. So I published this morning on X the current status of institutional investors. And you may put that chart up, Herbert, if you have a second. Yeah, that's exactly it. Now, first things first, those big jumps you see in those green lights, those were when the stock split. And Fintel, who gets its data from Morningstar, they don't want to change this because they are reasoning in numbers of shares, as you see on the x-axis. And they say, well, it's not for us to change. So you just have to adjust for and I tried multiple times to explain to them that this doesn't make any sense, but it is what it is. But what we really have to concentrate on are on the last 4 bars, the last 4 green bars, which is institutional shareholders within Tesla. Now you have to know Tesla has about 3.221 billion shares outstanding. And as you can see, the last 3 quarters, we have now largely overcome the 1.6 billion shares in the name of institutional shareholders. So institutional shareholders are fund managers, Vanguard, Fidelities of this world, all these people, and some pension funds, whatever, anything that is professionally managed. And so they went heavily into the stock in the 3rd and 4th quarter of last year and bought relatively high. I have to give it to them. They've got a little bit down. You see the last column is 1st quarter of 2025, but it still is obviously much higher than it was in the 1st quarter of 2024, meaning last year when we voted. And so at the moment institutionals hold 54.5% of outstanding shares. And you also have to understand that there will be topics, and this is now very clear once we have the proxy, which can be now in a couple of weeks, where Elon and probably also Kimball are having to recuse themselves from voting. So those 54.5%, if you deduct the 13% that Elon is holding, actually have a voting power of nearly 2/3, right? I think it's 64.5%. I did a quick calculation. So institutions have an enormous weight, and us, a retail investor who last year still had about half of the outstanding shares, have now just about a little bit more than 1/3. And so that is why it is really important that retail shareholders show up yet again for voting, because already we're in a lower position, but if then people don't vote, it's the institutionals deciding. And why is that so important? So long story short, I do believe the good and quickest and best way to get Elon to a voting situation where he has 25% of voting power is not issuing new options or giving him shares. That could be the case. There could be some transactions with XI or whatever. I don't know. But the cleanest and simplest would be to do what now Texas allows us to do, meaning issuing Class B shares. Class B shares usually have the same setup than Class A shares, but have higher voting rights. And so I published this morning a table that I did thanks to Grok. I'm always happy that we have Grok helping us quickly to do that, of companies that have Class B shares. So top one is Google Alphabet, where Larry and Sergey have about 6% of the shares. But with those 6%, making together 9, they have more than 50% of the total votes, right? Because the Class B shares have 10 times more voting power than the Class A shares. So that's how you get to these huge voting powers. The biggest artist in this game is Mark Zuckerberg from Meta. He has 13% of shares. He has nearly all of the Class B shares, because you can also issue Class B shares for executives or other board members. But with those 13%, he has 61% of total votes. That's why actually everybody speculates that Meta wants to leave also Delaware, because obviously that is considered in the eyes of the Chancery Court's chancellor as being, a superpower and being too controlling. Berkshire, Warren Buffett has a certain structure that gives him 2 votes for 1. So he has 15.8%. They inversed A and B shares, but it's the same system. So that gives him about 31% of votes. Ford has a system where the Ford family has 2% of shares, but they have, with those 2%, 40% of voting shares. So you can structure what a multiplier the Class B shares have. And obviously, by giving Class B shares this voting power, you take voting power away from the Class A holders, meaning us retail shareholders, which I'm sure nobody minds, or at least most of the retail shareholders don't mind. But you're also obviously weakening institutionals. So the big question will be is if they want to do that, will they be able in the time that is left? Because once we have the proxy, we have then 6 weeks until the shareholder meeting and the end of the voting period. Will they be able to convince the Vanguards and the Fidelities and the BlackRocks of this world that they are actually giving up voting power by allowing Class B shares? And so Class B share put in place and size of it and multiplier of it, like I said earlier, usually need a supermajority, 66.6%. I would have to dig into the bylaws of Tesla Texas, whether that's the number, but in general, that is what happens. So it's going to be, an uphill battle if they have to do it, but it would solve all this I need the voting power question the quickest. Now, will that be the only proposal? I mean, first of all, I don't know whether it's a proposal. That's my best suggestion. I hope they do it, but I have no knowledge of any inside information that they want to do it. But there could also obviously be a compensation plan now for 2025 onwards, and Cern is going to address that. I have not even thought about that part yet. This is just to solve the issue of the voting power. And then there is the third subject, which is obviously what happens to the 2018 compensation package. And that is completely out of the hands of Tesla. That is now in the appeal court of the Supreme Court of Delaware. And for that one, we have to wait. There are going to be hearings in August. There's going to be a verdict in November, December, and we'll see what happens then. So I'm sure that the 2018 compensation package is not going to be addressed. I would be very surprised if they do anything about that part before that appeal decision is out in Delaware.
Wow. Okay. So this is very big. Thank you for summarizing it. There is an appeal for the 2018 that we will find out in December. In the meantime, this shareholder vote, the proxy, you said that maybe one way is to offer to vote, have us all vote whether or not we agree with the Class B share model. But like you said, the retail needs to step up. We need to step up and vote.
Oh, yes.
You explained everything there. Could not be one of the ways to do that would be just say to whether or not Tesla should buy XAI shares. And if they do, in that way, Elon could gain 25% of shares over just straight out. Is that possible?
It could be. It would be a financial transaction, right? I don't think it could be just a gift. So I think it's more complicated. It's probably a tax triggering action if they do that.
No,
and I just think that
Alexandra, if they exchange share for share, there's no tax involved. So if I have XAI shares and I get 25% of my shares taken by Tesla and Tesla issues me stock, that's a like for like. That's not a taxable transaction.
So it would be what you're suggesting. I haven't thought this through. What you're suggesting is that Elon would give his XAI shares to Tesla, and Tesla would in exchange give him more Tesla shares.
Well, it's a little bit
by
more
issuing.
It's a little bit more complicated than that because there is a lot of fairness issues there. So it may be that we all have to give up some Tesla shares for shareholders of XAI all have to give up some XAI shares for Tesla shares. Elon is I forget the number, but it's over 70% shareholder of XAI. So he will get 70% of the Tesla shares from that. But it's not a taxable transaction. It's like for like.
And Tesla and Tesla would issue new shares for that, because that would be diluting everybody else.
No, not if there's an exchange of shares. Not if the Tesla shareholders exchange shares for XAI shares.
So who is giving the Tesla shares? Yeah, who exactly? So who is giving the Tesla shares? Because somebody has to give Tesla, Elon and the 30%.
Tesla and or its shareholders would either issue shares or the Tesla shareholders will transfer shares. I don't see how it's a taxable transaction.
Okay. Well, we have to think that through, but I don't think they could do it by using the current stock, the 3.2 billion shares that are there.
Yeah,
I think they would have to increase and therefore dilute the shares that are currently.
It wouldn't dilute. I mean, it would be more shares, but of a much larger organization. Because if
it holds XAI.
So if they give away 25% of XAI to Tesla and issue Tesla stock as a result, then the corporation's balance sheet would grow accordingly, and the shares would be worth the approximate same. I
have to think it through. I just think Class B shares would be so much easier.
Well, no, but they could be Class B shares. They could issue Class B shares in Tesla, so that the shares that Tesla issues for the stock in XAI could be Class B shares. There's a lot of reasons to justify that, more so than just issuing him shares.
Exactly.
And that is crazy. That would mean that the 30% other shareholders of XAI actually become Class B holders.
No. There are so many ways to do this. Elon could be the only one. So Elon would be selling his shares in XAI. Nobody else, only Elon selling his shares in XAI to Tesla for an issue of Class B shares in Tesla. That's a very simple.
You need something to appease the investors of Tesla and institutionals to allow Class B shares. Otherwise, why would they do it?
Let me put on the table a suggestion that this may not happen in time for this annual general meeting. Yes, they've constituted a committee, and by the way, the Texas law is far, far, far more friendly to these committees than the Delaware law. Delaware law make it very difficult for these committees to be for their findings to be holdings to be held by the court. In Texas, they pay far more respect. The Texas law pays a great deal of respect to these committees and don't undermine these committees based on law, based on court cases from before. They base it on the law itself. That's the huge difference between Texas and Delaware. Delaware law is really based on precedent. Texas law is based upon the written words of the law. So
Delaware is court of equity.
Yeah, you can't develop these theories over years and become more and more and more friendly towards shareholders, which they become woke, literally woke. Whereas in Texas, you have to abide by what the law says in writing. That's the huge difference. Anyway, what I'd like to suggest is that I think it's too close. I don't think we will have a resolution to this problem in this meeting. That's my guess.
Okay. And then, Alexandra, what can happen? You said 2018 comp plan. Can we reinstate that for him? If the appeal fails or the appeal succeeds, we won't know till December. But is there something that they could do today that says, if it fails, here's what we would do?
I don't think so. Again, I can be wrong. I'm speculating everything, and I'm very happy to listen to Larry, what he has to say. But I don't think we can touch the 2018 for the simple reason that, first of all, we need to win it. If we go into an appeal already having in a proxy solution B because we don't trust them, there's no way to win an appeal, right? You go into an appeal because you're in it to win it. The second point is that winning the appeal is the only way to make this financially a zero-sum game for us, because all these options have been accounted for years. By having no matter what solution, it is solutions that cost between $50 and $150 billion to Tesla shareholders, right? To you and me and all of us. So you're not starting to publish and put into a proxy a pre-vote on a plan B, if that, given the amounts that are due. So I don't think we're going to touch 2018 in this proxy and in this vote. there will be something that is prepared if we lose it, but we're in this to win this, and we have to really, as a community, step up that we expect Delaware to be fair and finally get this over with.
That's the reason that I really don't believe we're going to see an attempt to solve this problem in this shareholders meeting. Now, once we've got it finding in December, there's nothing to stop us having an extraordinary shareholders meeting in January or February. So I'm really hopeful that they actually don't do anything in this shareholders meeting, because I think we'll be in a much better situation once the
Well, I have the different meeting, a different feeling. First of all, obviously they put in place a special committee, so it's not just to discuss things. I mean, no board member wants to be in a special committee with the aim to do nothing, right? I mean, it's a real commitment of these two board members to find a solution, bring it forward to the board. If the board agrees, then bring it to the shareholders. It could very well be that the board as a whole doesn't agree, right, to what they find as a special committee, and that it doesn't end up in the proxy, but the work is going to be done. The second point is that remember how quickly and easily we won that Donald Ball case. So that was one of those still lingering cases. There are still cases lingering, but the Donald Ball one is over, because that was one where the shareholder, I think if I recall it right, he has 25 or 28,000 shares, a Florida retail investor who sued Tesla, saying the whole 2024 shareholder vote of moving to Texas would have needed 66.6%, and we only had 63 and something percent, and therefore should be invalidated. So if Chancellor McCormick really, was after us, which she is, but I think not to this point, she may have actually granted him, the at least hearings and whatsoever. But she decided to go to the fastest way of deciding this, and decided that no, Tesla was legitimately moving to Texas, and it was done. It was consumed, right? And that happened, I think, if I recall it right, about 3 months ago. And I think that gave that green light to set up a special committee, because now we are in Texas. We can think about not 2018, but about the current situation and about the forthcoming situation. And again, this XAI topic is on the table, right? I mean, Larry, you're probably much better informed than I will ever be, but the whole structure of integrating X into XAI, making it, this all happened for a purpose now. There was no rush to do it, yet they did it.
There was a rush to do it, actually. There was a very strong rush to do it. They had to settle the debt of X. And this was easily the most elegant way to settle the debt of X. So I think that deal is completely independent of an XAI/Tesla deal. My gut, and it's just a gut feeling, is that they're going to wait for the final judgment from the appeal court before making any move. I think the special committee is going to sit for quite a long time. Last time it took a long time. I think this time, I mean, if I were on that special committee, I'd say, let's wait a couple of months. It's only, 5 months or 6 months.
It's a long time. It's not early.
Why?
December.
It's not affecting the share price. It's not affecting Elon. It's not affecting anybody, because everything's going to be where it is now from a governance point of view in November, December.
Except that institutions are taking over. Elon requoted my post this morning. He is as unhappy about that as I am. So I think there is this feeling that short-term investors, because that's how he considers fund managers, and that's what they are now suddenly, for the first time, in a position. I mean, not for the first time, actually. Let me correct that, because in 2018, 70% of shareholders were institutions. Then it filtered down, then retail took over, but now it is happening again. And with what's happening in the next 6 months, which could affect the share price. I hope for all of us. Do you really want to have a close to 65% voting power in the hand of institutions? I'm not sure.
That's not it too, by the way. It's the stock price is going to rise. We've got robots and we got robotaxis. You don't want to wait till next year for Elon's compensation package for the new one. I think they're going to nail the new compensation package now, and then they'll deal with the old compensation package January.
When it comes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, guys,
okay.
Thanks for having me. Sorry for the, how I came. Usually I'm trying to look better.
Thank you so much,
It's been a pleasure.
Alexandra. I know
No
you have to
problem
leave.
at
You're
all.
on vacation. Appreciate you for jumping in. And the point that we want to make, right, just final point, is that retail shareholders, get your ducks in a row, get your shares now, because when proxy drops, you have a vote. We need every single one of us to vote.
And let me,
Very important.
thank you for saying that. Let me just state that again. When the proxy drops, the date of record is 2 weeks earlier. So let's say the proxy would drop end of May. It could very well, the date of record is today, May 15th or May 16th, right? And so you have to call, especially if you're using margin accounts, you have to call your broker or message them and ask that none of your shares are lended out at the moment. Because the biggest risk is that you have a lot of shares, but you lended them out because you're using them as collateral for your margin account. And then you don't have them in your account to be able to vote on them. So I just want to make sure that those that are using margin know that. I mean, obviously, I'm addressing the international groups. We have a couple of videos. Maybe, Herbert, you can hang them below this video where we did last year, how to be able to vote internationally. Lots of things improved since last year, especially for the British. But again, for those that use margin, react now. You can tell your broker to not lend them out. They may not give you the remuneration for this month, what it is, but it's worth it because it will allow you to vote.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Okay, you can drop. So we got news that dropped yesterday that was also quite important for this topic. Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed into law, right, corporate protections. So it's now a lot harder for a small shareholder, just a few of them, to be able to file lawsuits against publicly traded companies. That's what happened with this 2018 one. There was one guy that had, 9 shares or something like that. That should not be something possible. So that's great news. That's why it's much better to incorporate in Texas. Let's talk about what would be the new compensation plan. If you were the board, what would you offer Elon from now and onward for his new compensation plan? Why don't you set the stage for us, Cern?
Sure. Yeah. So let's just review the 2018 performance award plan first. So when that was set, the market cap of the company was $59 billion. And they had a couple things here. So there were 12 different option tranches, and each of them equated to 1% of the shares outstanding. So at the time, it was like 1.2 million shares apiece. Oh, sorry, 1.7 million shares apiece. So that first table there shows there's 12 different market cap benchmarks that Elon needed to meet in order to release the shares, plus the operational ones. We'll get to that in a second. But as we go along there, you can see that 1.7 million shares are released when the market cap hits 100 billion, and then a total of 3.4 million shares were released when the market cap hits 150, and so on. So it went up in $50 billion increments, and the highest one was $650 billion. And at that point, 20.3 million shares would be released, plus the operational component. We'll get to that in a second. But basically, the market cap needed to 10x from 60-ish billion to 650 billion. Okay, a bit more than 10x. So that was what they required on the market cap side. And then there were operational milestones in the bottom half of this table. So there were 2 different buckets there. There were revenues. Revenues needed to go from, different milestones, 20 billion, 35 billion, 55 on up to 175 billion. And then there were adjusted EBITDA or profitability metrics as well, from 1.5 billion up to 14 billion. So full vesting required that he achieve 12 of those 16 different operational milestones, plus the market cap milestones. So it wasn't just good enough for the stock to go up a lot. He also needed to make sure that the company fundamentally was producing revenues and earnings. Okay. And it wasn't just good enough for the company to produce revenues and earnings if the stock didn't go up. You needed both to happen at the same time or to reach those milestones. So this was how the previous plan was structured. The revenue, by the way, the revenue targets were a 15x. The highest revenue target was 15x 2017 levels, and the profitability target was 21 times the 2017 level. So roughly 10, 11x increase on market cap, 15x on revenue, and 21x on profit.
My gosh.
Okay.
Give the man his money. He achieved, this is greatness to
Right?
achieve this.
It's amazing what he achieved. It was a pretty, it was unprecedented plan, basically. So what I did here then in the next image is to say, okay, let's say we're designing a 2025 plan. And let's say we're designing it in the image of the 2018 plan. Okay. Now there may be all kinds of good reasons to deviate from what they did in 2018, and we can discuss that. But if we use a market cap tranche, I'm taking it from 1 trillion. We're about 1.1 trillion right now. So just use easy numbers. I started at 1 trillion. And then 12 tranches on up to 5 trillion. Now, this results in a 5x of the market cap. The previous one was 10. So if you want to, we could consider doubling this. So instead of 5 trillion for the 12th tranche, it could be 10. And we can debate the pros and cons of that. Okay, but it would be a 5x increase in the market cap. And now the options would be about 32 million shares on the bottom there, the x-axis on the previous chart. Herbert,
Oh, sorry.
just want to mention
we
that
go.
real quick.
Gotcha.
In the orange or the yellow letters there. And it would be a total of 384 million shares. This, with his current holdings, would get him to 25%. Okay, so I designed this in a way so that he gets to 25% once he completes this performance award plan. Now, he may want 25% long before this happens. So this doesn't address any of that. It's just a way to show, okay, how does he get to 25% without involving XAI and all that? Here's one way to do it. Again, I'm not suggesting this is the best way, but it's a potential pathway. The next chart, Herbert, shows then the operational milestones. These are probably a bit more aggressive. We've got adjusted EBITDA going from 14 billion, which was the end of the previous one, on up to almost 300 billion. Okay, that's the yellow bars. And then the revenue milestones, the company is almost done 100 billion in annual revenue. So let's start there. And that would take us up to 1.5 trillion. So again, he would need to reach 12 of these 16 milestones, right? So the combination of this plus the market cap ones. So if we were to design another plan that was similar to 2018, this is what it might look like, or something like this. Is now the time? Perhaps not. Maybe it is. I don't know. That's going to be an interesting decision for the board to figure out as to whether or not they try to put something in place sooner rather than later. In some ways, I can see the pros of that in terms of having something in place and shareholders to get some clarity on if the previous plan doesn't stick, then here's the one that we're aiming towards now. I guess the issue is, does this complicate things with the Delaware court? And if it does, then we don't really want to add to that problem.
Yeah, I love it. I think that 5 trillion is too low. It should be 10 trillion. I know it sounds stupid, doesn't it? That sounds really stupid. 5 trillion is too low, but it's just that it's a 5x.
It's 3 times the largest company in the world right now. 3x the largest company in the world in just a few years. He can hope for a very high level of inflation, but I mean, it's amazing. Yeah.
Do you guys think that they will offer him something like this again, or is this going to be seen yet again? Well, why would you offer the same kind of model that you just did last time that got sued?
I hope not, because I think the first time they offered it, it was so ridiculous that everybody thought, give it to him because he'll never get there. Now they'll say, we're not doing that again. I mean, certainly I think the institutions will say that. But what do I know? What do you think, Jeff? You're the corporate guy.
I like incentive-based compensation just in general. I think it not that Elon needs to be driven, but it really sets everything up from the CEO all the way down. So he establishes the culture and he establishes incentive-based compensation all the way down through his team, and now in hiring the best people in the world to get the 10 trillion. So I think it drives I think incentive-based compensation drives the right behaviors. It's a question of, is it this kind of structure again, or is it something else? And you also have to think about what are Elon's longer term aspirations. It's not that he needs, more houses or boats or any houses or boats to buy. It's more of, what is he thinking about long term, and what is he trying to fund long term, and how does he see the world on the other side of achieving these milestones in terms of, altering the course of humanity. And if, he can be properly, he has to protect himself too. And he needs to be compensated in a way where he can, protect himself. And when you think about protecting himself, it can come in many different forms. It could be, $250 million to make sure, the candidate that's not going to try to incarcerate him and put him in jail is elected. I mean, there's a number of different ways to go. I know it's controversial, but he has to have the best compensation plan in the world. He's trying to achieve the best results in the world. So I think there's merit to incentive-based compensation. And I think he's going to be more protected, as in Texas, incorporated in Texas. And you also have to think about, what does the world look like 3 years from now, especially if there's a different administration. Everything is so hyper politicized now, and it seems to be cooling off over the last 30 days, which is good. Hopefully that trend continues, but you have to think about protecting Elon, and what does Elon want to do beyond, building cars and humanoids and autonomy.
Okay. Great point. Thank you, Jeff. Always do the best thing, right? Incentive-based compensation, but what does he want? I think this will, 25% control, but I do agree he wants money. He needs money to fund his goals of protecting humanity, going to Mars. And you know how it's going to get there? $5 trillion is nothing. It's nothing, because we're talking about humanoid bots, and he's well away on the development of humanoid bots.
Yeah, well, if it's 10 trillion, he can always hope for a lot of inflation. It may happen anyway. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for putting that together, Cern. We got to talk about the bot. They dropped the humanoid bot progress. Jeff, you saw this. What was your thinking about this image here, or this movement? This is apparently 1x speed. This is sim to real. They taught, the bot in simulation how to dance, and then in one shot, send it to the real bot, and it was able to do this. What's your thinking, Jeff?
That to me, that's everything. There's two things in this, and people are like, "Oh, is it tethered or not?" You're asking the wrong questions. One is the agility of the bot and the movements it's capable of making, and the other thing is how quickly this bot was taught to be able to do this. Whether you like the dance moves or not, it's the fact that it can be taught this quickly. Speed is everything in this. If we can't get these bots to move at the right speed in the factory, if they can't get trained on an operation more quickly, if they can't get trained to the point of, again, thanks, Herbert. Anything else you want to disrupt?
I never learned. I haven't never learned. That's always there.
Keep up. Oh, you're okay. You blasted Larry out of the show.
Where's Larry?
Everything in manufacturing comes down to speed, capability, and precision, and it's speed and precision. So if you can get the bot trained very quickly, there's that is a currency in itself. And obviously the other thing is precision. You start looking at the precision of some of these moves, the speed of some of these moves, and okay, well then, all right, now everybody's been showing bots moving kind of big things around, carrying a panel, moving a battery from a tray. Okay, when do we start looking at it manipulating a wire harness? When do we start seeing it, manipulating a torque gun? When do we start seeing it doing other things at smaller and smaller levels? That's where I think we're going to have a great sorting mechanism between all the various bots out there. And not my theory, it's actually, I think, fairly well founded. If you pass all of these bot companies through a filter of, do you have an AI, the capability to produce and create your own AI brain and training and so forth? Do you have the manufacturing capability? What products have you put in scale? and have you done it profitably? And then have you done things in a vertically integrated manner? If you start passing all of these companies through this filter, because at the output of the filter, you want something that performs very well at a cost structure that is profitable. And I think there's going to be very few companies on the other side of that filter. And there will be a gradient. Tesla's not going to have 100% market share, nor do they need it. There will be others out there, but I think you're going to see a gradient of lesser and lesser capability, slower, it's slower performance, what have you. And those bots may serve a purpose, but I think what I saw in this video here, the two takeaways were the mechanical agility and the speed at which it was taught to be able to do this, because that's everything for manufacturing. The third thing is precision. We don't know where it's at on that yet. And then there's all kinds of things in the background: reliability, current drain or power consumption. There's all these other things in the background, but who knows how to solve reliability and power consumption better than a company that has to solve for it in EVs and makes the safest vehicles in crash testing and the lowest cost of ownership post-launch. All these things factor into, are they going to be able to build a bot that stands the test of time at a lifetime cost structure that really moves the world? And I think there's going to be very few companies with that capability.
Just to build a little bit, Jeff, on what you said, the thing that kind of blows me away with this is the speed of training. What's the implication of that? Well, it brings the future closer to the present, right? If we find a way to train these bots that much faster, then we get bots that are doing real world work that much sooner. So that's one thing. The second thing, the speed of the bot. Before, we saw bots walking around pretty slowly. This bot was moving quick. Now apply that, as Jeff said, to operating a torque gun and other implements and doing other things. In my models, I have bots replacing, humans one for one, right? What happens if a bot can work so fast that it replaces 2 humans, right? And then, so instead of then working, 3 or 4 shifts and the bot replacing 3 people, now it's replacing 6 people. So again, it's bringing that future into the present that much quicker, right? And all the implications of that in terms of changes to the workforce and job loss and all those things. Now, again, this is just early days on this. I don't think we can make this assumption just from this one video, but that's where my mind goes when I see the bot moving this quickly. The economic impact of that just gets accelerated.
Yeah. There's an element in manufacturing line design. When you're doing the economics of the line design, you're thinking about, if you're designing for automation, you're thinking about the return on investment of that automation. And that's what all companies grapple with. It changes their portfolio. It changes their manufacturing footprint. It has huge implications. But now, if that piece of CapEx is more fungible and it can actually move itself from one operation to another, it may have been something that would have never crossed the threshold before to automate, but now you do, and now that's you're not only replacing, you not only have the opportunity to do the operation faster when it's replacing human labor, but you also have the opportunity to automate something that was never automated before, or you may be able to reduce your fixed capex footprint in a manner that you would have never been able to do before. You may be able to do different line configurations faster than you've ever done before, and do changeovers quicker than you. There's so many implications of this. I mean, and when you think through the economics of it, it's mind-boggling. So what you have to do now is just think in big chunks, like super, super big chunks. If you try to do like very fine precision thinking on some of this stuff, I think you'll get wrapped around the axle. But the big chunks for me come around labor replacement and potentially CapEx replacement. And at the speed at which this thing learned, that's pretty scary.
Well,
scary good if you're invested in bots.
Yeah, scary good. And so every bot, by definition, is probably going to replace not one human being, but in an industrial setting, multiple shifts of that particular human being. So if they're running 2 shifts, it'll be replacing 2, right? 3 shifts, then probably 2.5 or so, or something like that. So the opportunity in industry is really quite significant. I mean, very significant indeed. But I can't wait to get my own bot. I mean, it's frustrating as hell, you know. I'm prepared to pay the $200,000 for the early release.
There we go. We've got a bidder, Tesla, if you're listening.
You know what?
figure-
I'll
No,
bet
no.
$250,000. My opening bid is $250,000. It's more than their bill of materials right now, I can tell you.
Hey, Larry, if the tax bill goes through, you can expense CapEx, so you can even go higher than that if you want to,
Yeah.
depending on the
This is
depending
a
on the
killer
intended use
panel.
case.
Well, I
Killer
can
panel.
expense the cap. No, not the. Yeah, I can expense the operation, not the capex. Yeah, you're right. You're
Okay.
right.
So I want to just clarify very quickly, right? I think this panel understands this, but most of the audience saw Dancing Bot and they go, yeah, BYD does it. All the Chinese, we've been watching this. You're focusing the wrong thing. Okay. Focus on the fact that they built a sim to real, that it's a one shot, and look at the fine
Explain
precision
what that means,
of
but
them.
it's because one shot sim to real.
Yeah, I've got actually I got something here that it can actually explain that really well. Okay. It's right here. So look how ready I am, guys. Come on.
Good for you. Good for you.
Herbert, don't pull a muscle patting yourself on the back.
Cheers.
All right, here it is. This is what Grok said what zero shot means. Zero shot means that Tesla Optimus was trained to dance in a simulated environment, right, on a computer using reinforcement learning, then perform the moves in real world without additional training, just one-time transfer. Its ability to transfer skills from simulation to reality is a big step for robotics. It's significant because it cuts down on costly real-world training, highlights the robot's adaptability. However, limitations exist. It relies on diverse training data, may struggle with precise tasks, and could face safety issues in untested situations. And that's why it's the precision that really needs to matter. And of course, Elon himself said this. Elon said, we noticed that one thing we didn't see was the hands. And there's a reason why they didn't want to show you the hands quite yet. But the great hands are the hardest part. That's the advantage that Tesla has, all the dexterity in the hands and the degrees of freedom. And he said, except for the real world AI, this is super, super hard. And he said that he's going to have an Optimus dance troupe on stage with him at the Tesla shareholder meeting. So this means that he's going to be at the Tesla shareholder meeting, and it is going to be happening. He's planning it for now. So that's good news.
I think when you have the combination of these assets inside of Tesla, remember, it's not just manufacturing assets. It's the tool shop where they can fabricate and machine components real time. It's the tooling engineers that they actually have that understand the tooling. Besides the systems level engineering design, when you have the kind of assets Tesla has, they may not have the top roboticists in the world. They may or may not. It's arguable. It's how do you even rank these people? But they have the assets. They have the culture and the leadership from the top down to be able to go after these really difficult problems and solve them. So yeah, I agree on the hands piece of it. This is going to come down to, in a real manufacturing environment, to replace humans, you're going to have a level of dexterity that typical humanoids and typical, I shouldn't say typical robotic, conventional robotics has tremendous dexterity. There's tremendous accuracy involved if you look at some of the examples that are used in manufacturing today, but to do it in humanoid form, that's not been a traditional thing. So I do think Tesla is equipped to solve this problem, to solve it economically, and to solve it at scale. Remember, you can't just do it. You can't just kick out a prototype. You've got to be able to solve it at scale.
Okay. So that's Optimus, right? And the other big thing, of course, that's coming is June. Elon posted saying that June is game time. It's here where it's game time for us. And we're still waiting for the new affordable vehicles to show up. Both of these should happen in June, which is literally 2 weeks away and a month of June. So I'm going to pop out very quickly. Can you guys just sort of talk about that topic, what's important about it, and then I'll be back really quickly.
Just as a sort of transition to that topic, with the breakthroughs that we're seeing in simulation to real on the robot side, I'm wondering if they're also enjoying some of that on the FSD side. I'm curious as to what you guys think of that. Obviously, real world miles matter a lot in FSD, and they always will. Yeah. But I'm wondering if the sim to real improvements they're getting on the robot side translate to FSD.
I think they do. Wave has spoken a great deal. Wave is a competitor to FSD, and they've spoken about sim-to-real. But if you go very early in the full, end-to-end neural net period, I think this must have been almost 2 years ago now, when that first paper was presented to the to this AI convention, and they showed real, end-to-end neural nets. They actually showed a simulation where the car drove in a completely simulated environment, and they spoke about training from that perspective. So I imagine it's become fairly standard. But I could be wrong. I mean, it in these development environments, it's very, very hard to determine what's really being done and what's demo mode. But I think that if I wouldn't be surprised to see it very widely used right now, and competitors have spoken about it, so that gives me another clue, another breadcrumb to make that determination.
Is the successful rollout of FSD in China, Larry, further evidence of that, do you think? Because they
Good
trained
point.
on,
Yeah, very good point. They trained on what they said was video ads and videos of other cars, but it's more than possible that they've created an entire sim of Chinese roads. So it's makes a lot of sense to do that. And I will say that the complexity of this sim-to-real for the robot really shocked me. What we've seen in robot moves up to now have been very limited in terms of dexterity, speed, balance. Walking seemed to be like painful. This was, and we got a clue of this when we saw that robot, coming down that hill. I don't know if you recall, just a few months ago, we saw a robot struggling to regain balance as it rolled, as he tumbled down, not tumbled, but actually stumbled down the hill, and did it quite well. I mean, more than well, he did it very well. But this is a whole different level.
Yeah, no, I think with the June Robotaxi event, so it's it's some amount of weeks away. I don't think people should be like too hung up on June 1st. I don't think Tesla has proclaimed, what this is the official launch date, or not. I think people should, and I've talked about this for months. I've actually talked about this for more than a year. When you're launching a product, there's some amount of variation in just the exact date. The fact that Tesla and Elon have gone from sometime this year, talking about unsupervised FSD, to an actual month, tells you that there is a level of maturity and understanding and capability that did not exist before. And we are very near term, and they are still committing to it. Whether it's June 1st or whether it's June 15th or whether it's June 29th, I think there's some amount of variation. It could be July, it could be mid-July for all we know. Obviously that would, be met with some amount of whatever, but just in my experience, when you're launching a regular product, there could be a couple of weeks of variation. This is something that nobody's ever done before, ever, with their approach. So I've always said that there could be several weeks of variation on this, if not a couple of months, and just, be patient. I think they will roll this out very carefully, given the media, the outsized media scrutiny that Tesla gets on its own. I think they would want to be very careful, but I also think at the same time that they are actually very confident in what they're doing and what they're building. And they wouldn't be reiterating this all the way up and down the chain, from Elon all the way down to individual engineers putting themselves out there on X. They wouldn't be doing that if they weren't confident in it themselves. So I'm sure there's some amount of problems they still have to solve. But remember, we're running around in our cars with something that was trained, in October of last year, and they may have made huge amounts of progress between that point in time and where we are today. So I'm excited to see what Tesla does at some point, but don't get hung up on June 1st. Think about that month, and then think about Tesla just kind of scaling into this activity, but I think they'll bring it up city by city faster than anybody else has ever done out there.
Do you think this NHTSA letter about bad weather and occlusion and so on will have any impact on Tesla or on the program in Austin?
Well, I think it's questions that they have to answer. I don't know if it's you must answer these. I don't think they're a serial event with the June event. I think it's more of like, hey, here's a list of inquiries. Could you please answer in a reasonable time frame? And I think they will.
That was my takeaway, but I just wondered if there was anything that we should concern ourselves with. And I'm wondering, did the NHTSA management change, or did the NHTSA, higher ups change with the change of administration? Are you aware of that?
They did. Yeah, I forgot the name of the person, but there was definite changes made in management. So
interesting. Okay.
There was some reporting today that Tesla hasn't in Austin yet removed the safety drivers from their test vehicles.
Right.
And there's some suggestions that, they need to go through a period of, weeks of testing the vehicles without safety drivers. Curious as to what you guys think about that.
I'll be aligned with that. I mean, I think at least a couple of weeks of testing without safety drivers.
I think it's just more speculation. Unless, first off, I agree. I mean, you'd want to, first off, Tesla knows if there's a driver in the seat or not. Tesla knows, was there intervention, touching the wheel, the accelerator, or the brake. They know that regardless of if there's somebody physically in the seat or not. So I don't know how important that is. And, these are unnamed sources. So I would be surprised. I mean, we see vehicles running around all over Giga Austin on the track with nobody in them. So I don't know what to tell you. Maybe they're not in town. I don't know. To me, I don't know if I had just speculated. I know the source of the article. I know where the article came from. It's more unnamed sources. I don't know what you do with that. Okay, agreed. But regardless if they have been or not, Tesla knows the data if there's been any intervention with the wheel, the brake, or the accelerator. So yeah, I think this is a big event. It's a big kind of turning point in the company. Yeah.
Well, the most interesting question is not what date in June they'll launch or when they'll launch.
Right.
The biggest question is the rate of rollout of the service nationally. I saw some suggestion on X Day by a Tesla bull saying it's going to take 2.5 years of rollout and it's not going to have any. No, he said it's not going to have any impact on Tesla's earnings for 2.5 years. The next 2.5 years is what he said. My own instinct is that once you dialed it in a city and you really feel confident of your operations, of your processes, of the car's operations, I think it can roll out extraordinarily quickly when you look at Tesla's presence in these major cities and their infrastructure in these major cities. I mean, in this little city of Raleigh, we have 3 major Tesla dealership operations. I mean, and they're large; they're not little operations.
Yeah, this is the thing. You hit it on the head, Larry. That people don't discuss is Tesla's existing infrastructure between service centers and supercharging, and just charging of vehicles. The existing infrastructure for a Robotaxi network is unmatched. Everybody else is actually going to have to use some Tesla infrastructure, especially from a charging perspective in one way or another. And so if anything, I think that N+1 and N+2 are going to be very quick. Could there be some gating items? Sure. If they're developing some sort of internal and external cleaning capability, maybe there's some tooling up or there's some time frame for that. Who knows? and of course the fleet management, the software, the people side of this, that could be a gating item. But these things aren't. To me, this is just execution. The rocket science, no pun intended, is done between, a computer vision only approach. That was the rocket science. Right. And they've gotten this down from, I think we're going to do it this year, to we're launching it this month. So they have a dashboard of statistics and information in front of them that are informing their decision. And like I said, there could be variation. We're down to the short strokes now. We're not in the, is it next year or is it 2 years from now? We're down to maybe, what week is it in June, or maybe it's a few weeks after June. We're into the short strokes of this based on how Tesla is communicating up and down the chain.
Absolutely. But the main point remains that for every other vendor that's entering the space, other than maybe a Hertz or an Avis, for every other vendor entering in the space, they do not have the infrastructure that Tesla already has in every major market in this country today. Every major market in this country, except Alaska, I think Elon pointed out. But other than Alaska, they have infrastructure in every state. Now, until the Robotaxi comes out, they have to charge by in the charging stations. And so they're going to have a fair amount of support in that area. But I noticed in the service center that I visited just the other day, they have 24 additional charging stations that I didn't see the last time I was there. Yeah. So, and these are not fast chargers. Actually, they're not. Yeah, they're actually AC chargers, and they're not fast chargers. But if you think about it, in the first instance, they'll have 6 to 8 hours to charge those vehicles, because those vehicles will have to park at night. I think
Makes
that
sense.
all these shopping centers that are deserted now across the nation, and particularly deserted at night, that have charging stations, I think they should just set up their little operations there, because they have all the parking space in the world and they have the chargers right there.
Yeah. Tesla, besides this Robotaxi rollout, I've seen Tesla, they're building a lot of service centers and a lot of delivery centers. They're popping up all over around here. This doesn't sound like a company this sounds like a company gearing up to me to be selling product at a higher rate and into different channels than they were before. I think Cern hit on this really nicely last week about, Tesla's a build to order model. They also have added a build to inventory model, and there could be a build to fleet model. And they are in gearing. They're not in retrenchment mode. I'm seeing more and more service centers. I'm seeing more and more superchargers popping up. And to me, it's interesting. And I look ahead to the next year, and I look at EV growth. If you just look at the US alone, I'm just wondering where the cars are going to come from if they're not coming from Tesla, because 4 of the cars that were in the top 10 in sales now have a 25% tariff on their transfer price into the country. I think that really they will limit the supply or stop those product lines, in my experience. They will severely limit. Yeah.
Or reduce the tariffs. I don't think
maybe.
The tariff story is over yet. Yeah, I think they have to. Anyway, but that's a separate issue. I'm just excited because my spare Model 3, which is a brand new car, it's only got 3,000 miles on it, is waiting to be entered into the fleet. I mean, I'll be the first guy in Charlotte having a car in the fleet.
Larry, gonna get your car into the Robotaxi. You want to buy the first robot. What's with you?
Yeah, I'm just a fanboy. I'm the biggest.
We have a few minutes.
Herbert, when you were gone, he was talking about buying the assets to Brighter with Herbert as well.
What are you talking about? I already own that.
He already owns me. Yeah. Jeff owns me. I owe Jeff. Okay, so we got a few minutes here left. I want to talk about Elon and his comment about him thinking about how to get 1 terawatt of compute. 1 terawatt compute is 3,333 times what the largest supercomputer is today. That is, some people believe that it's the Memphis XAI's Colossus that has 300,000 H100 equivalents. That's what you need to get to. You need the equivalent of the electrical power that is used for the entire United States right now. So for him to say that, why is he saying that? What is he trying to do? Is this associated with Tesla? What's your thoughts, guys?
That's a lot of transformers. I'll tell you, a lot of transformers. You can work through the limitations, and the first one that pops at the top is transformers. I mean, transformers are just very easy to make, a lot of copper, but I mean, we've stopped making transformers at scale. I mean, this is huge scale. So that's number one.
I think, yeah.
And then you need a lot of energy. You need a lot of source of energy, and we've got nuclear. We've got. I mean, the problem is you need it all in relatively large amounts at specific places. So there's a huge logistical problem to get it there. And then you need a huge amount of money.
Right. You'll need the compute, the GPUs.
I think the GPU problem is not as critical as just the scale of everything. It's just the scale of everything. You could tick off each component, but when you have to tick off, several million of each component, or many millions of each component, into the hundreds of millions of each component, then it's scale. But I'll remind everybody that this beggars the study that Tesla did only 2 years ago, when they worked out how much it would take to move the whole world to energy independent, to energy that is independent of fossil fuels, and this beggars all of that. This adds like 25% more energy than the whole world needed in like 10 years or 20 years time. That was 3 terawatt. This is another terawatt. So it's an extra 1/3 of energy on top of all the energy the world needs in the next, to move to non-fossil fuels.
I'll just say quickly, I think there's a bit, the gamesmanship isn't the word, but you've got to have positioning here, because this is a very complex chain. You've got a source of energy, a source of silicon supply, and you've got to be thinking through all those things. So Humane, Saudi Arabia, all eyes on the Middle East. Saudi Arabia announced a 0.5 terawatt system. How can Elon be sitting out there not having the biggest system in the world, given his assets, and given that he's introducing physical real world AI, and he's introducing agentic forms of AI with XAI and beyond agentic form and superhuman intelligence? If that is the end objective, it's, he clearly doesn't have what he needs right now to get there. So how do you get the attention of everybody that would be producing energy, everybody that would be permitting energy, and any kind of government regulatory efforts? How do you get the attention? He already has the attention of NVIDIA and Jensen Huang, but how do you maintain and keep that position when somebody is on stage with the president saying, I'm going to do a 0.5 terawatt system? Well, then all the kind of the oxygen will go towards that. That's how these things tend to work. So I think part of it is also just like, I'm thinking bigger. I'm thinking bigger than anybody else at this point. And I think he's got to maintain that. But I also think he's got a real use for it, given the product lines I just discussed that he's building. So I just think that's what's behind it.
I would just add that Jensen at NVIDIA talks a lot about finding ways to reduce the energy costs of the chips. And that's got to be a key factor in this. I mean, obviously we need to produce a lot more energy, and we will, but that's not going to be enough, right? Like, we're not going to double the energy output in the United States so that we can use half of it for AI. Like, maybe eventually we will, but not anytime soon. That's such a big lift. You have to do it with the chips. We're going to have to find ways to get more compute with less power. And we're doing that. That's happening now.
But the Chinese are so far ahead of us. They're doing it like on an annual basis.
Yeah.
So, if they could do it, why can't we? I think we're at the beginning of a major revolution. And, this president, everybody has these hang-ups, or many people have these hang-ups about it. He may be the deus ex machina of this whole change, because it's possible. It's just a question of setting our minds to it. And nobody has a better sense of what is possible than Elon Musk. That's the one thing he's proven to us, is that he makes these impossible sounding targets, and then he makes the target. Now, he doesn't do it in the timescales that he hoped to do it, but he does make it. So he has a real sense of what is possible.
I think he's already.
Part of the, I was going to say quickly, Herbert, part of the timescale thing is getting people to move and think a different way than they've done before, knowing that you're not going to maybe hit that end objective. But if you don't do it, you may have never gotten there ever, not even on the right time frame. You may have never been able to marshal the resources to get there at all. So it's just an interesting thought. I'm sorry, Herbert.
The first point is that he's repeated a few times recently, right? That if it's not bound by physics, it's possible. And so 1 terawatt, not bound by physics, and he's trying to solve each of these bottlenecks. He's thinking about it. The other point is that when he says, I'm thinking about this 1 terawatt compute, and he posts it today, he's done something. He's done something 6 months ago. If you look at the previous things that he posts, you find out later that 4 months, 6 months before that, he'd actually made moves already. So maybe something big has already been happening. But at the end of the day, this has got to be good news for Tesla. I remember at the beginning of this year, we kept saying the most important thing for Tesla is compute. And we need to see Tesla invest in compute, and they have been. And they've been showing, not only are we building the largest supercomputer in the world here in Memphis, we're doing one also for Tesla here in Giga, Texas. And by the way, we're building Cortex 2 now, and we're doing it faster than anyone else is. And now I'm thinking terawatt compute. What can that mean? It could mean that we're headed first to AGI, first to robotics, first to autonomy, and the more compute you have, the more likely yours will be better than others and superhuman. It's getting very, very exciting.
Well, I will remind everybody that the supercomputer he built in his AI company is built in the Tennessee River Valley. And that Tennessee Valley Authority hasn't made a development in 75 years. So I think there's enormous power, a huge power that we haven't even begun to tap in this country. But, hopefully we're beyond this ecology kind of problem that we've built for ourselves.
I'm going to stick to my guns. I've been saying this for the last year or two, which is energy generation is the only pillar of the master plan part 3 that Tesla's not doing. And I believe that they're going to announce a very large solar farm, maybe in Saudi Arabia. That's why they were there. They're negotiating it. They already got it settled up. I know. Everybody says no. I know.
Can't have a solar farm in
it's
one
be
place.
Distributed.
That's
but,
actually...
it's got to be... I mean, he's going to... I think that's what he said. That's what he's thinking, talking about him.
The central problem to solar farms in the United States of America is the timescales of the regulations. It's the biggest single problem, and it's not even a U.S. government problem. It's actually, this non-governmental operation. It's the grid. It's the grid operators that's the central. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation.
Great. What a conversation we're having these days, right? Obviously, great to hear that Elon's having his compensation plan considered. We'll find out what happens there. We're talking about progress with Optimus, progress with Robotaxi. We're waiting for the new vehicles. They'll drop anytime soon. And we're talking about terawatts of compute now. We'll follow this closely. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. Appreciate Alexandra for joining us. And Larry Goldberg, the man, startup. You want to be there at the very beginning of everything. Cern, thank you for always coming together with your data. And of course, there is Jeff Lutz. No one like him with experience. Thanks, everybody. Bye, everybody. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.